There it is, the $20 crab skin, the premium skin for this week. Oh my goodness. And you know what? Wrecking Ball is getting a buff, a few heroes are getting a rework, and I owe you guys an apology. So let's get into it. So the first thing I gotta mention is that I apologize for not watching the entire Flats interview before posting my previous video. I watched some of it, I got some info from Twitter, I got info from patch notes, and then I pushed out the video. I don't get them early, so I'm kind of scrambling to get all the information, and I'm gonna criticize it a little bit. I do wish more information was in the patch notes. Like, if they kind of know what they want to say about each and every single change, you know how they have the dev comments, they might want to expand on that. Like, for example, they talked about Roadhog and the changes, but then in the dev blog, or sorry, in the dev interview with Flats, literally goes ahead and says that a tweak, a rework is still coming to Roadhog, in which utility will be added to the hero, but that's not specifically said in patches. We know Brigida is going to get some changes. We wouldn't have known that unless you followed the dev on Twitter, etc., etc. So I would call this scattered info, and it definitely makes it a little bit harder to form an opinion and also deliver accurate news to you guys. With that being said, after rewatching it and also watching fellow content creators' videos to make sure I have everything, let's talk about what the devs want to crack down on, because it's actually quite expansive. So Roadhog's one-shot is basically gone, to be honest. Right now in the background, I'm playing the new Roadhog, and by no means is he weak. I still think he's very, very strong and potent. Most likely huge big nerfs for people in the high ranks, right? Because there's actual time for the enemies to react when you get hooked. Any good amount of teamwork was always able to put Roadhog down, but now it's way easier to both survive and put him down thanks to these nerfs. But in the rank, or I guess in the quick play that I'm playing, it's not a huge deal since these people who I'm fighting against aren't super coordinated. So if I'm taking these one-on-one fights, I'm still doing massive damage with my scrap gun, and of course hitting that vape in order to stay alive. I basically still felt very tanky, and with my Pocket Mercy helping me quite a lot, I felt I was doing substantial work in this game. Now maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's still relatively strong across all ranks averaged out. But only time will tell, and we're gonna have to see the data. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Widowmaker and Hanzo might get touched up. Basically, what I believed was just dealing with Roadhog's one-shot actually extends to the game itself. Same way Blizzard wanted to reduce CC when moving from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, they're now deciding that they want to also crack down on one-shots altogether, meaning Widowmaker and Hanzo might get changed in which they can no longer one-shot in the future. Now, this is not confirmed, and it is just talk. It is just partial speculation and opinion. You know, this is kind of controversial. I definitely think these heroes will start losing identity. Like, a lot of identity still came from the one-shot with Roadhog, but since he's a tank, that's a no bueno, way too frustrating. And while getting one-shot by a Widowmaker is still very frustrating, man, will she, I mean, one of her lines is one shot, one kill. She will start losing identity rapidly. So maybe instead we just lower her health so she's easier to dive on. But then, you know, how much do you weaken her in the lower ranks? How do you balance that against the higher rank? There's skill ceiling and skill floors that are just wildly different with certain heroes. And someone like Widowmaker is a big one. And let's say Hanzo, he's already very, very weak. You want to take away his one shot. What are you going to do with him? Now, he is someone who maybe that's not a huge deal, because you can take away his one shot, then make his bow shoot faster, and he plays a little bit more upfront, DPS, keep shooting, and that could be fun for Hanzo. I don't know fully. I don't want to speak too much on it, but it's something I wanted to let you guys know because it's something that Blizzard is looking at. I have already mentioned in the last video a Brigida rework. I think most of you guys already expect a Brigida rework, and it's in a phase which we should see it by season 4. The effects and art team are still working on all the assets and animations or whatever it may be, and that kind of indicates that yes, we will most likely actually see a new ability or new ultimate that even visually looks very, very different because it's the art team and assets. So that's pretty substantial. That's pretty substantial news. It's something that isn't a minor rework, but seems like would change Brigida quite substantially. Something I was kind of surprised to hear, even though I did cover it, it just got reiterated. Sombra will not only have number tweaks, but most likely also new abilities. And I guess this is something we should have expected, similar to Roadhog. When you have someone who's built around a specific kit, in which Sombra, it's that landing that hack, you either make that hack way too frustrating or too weak and she becomes useless. Usually that character needs some changes, and Sombra is going to be one of them. Something else talked about, which is pretty funny and I think extremely important, is tank nerfs across the board. So a global tank nerf to game modes that are not role queue. This is huge because with any new event and new free-for-all game mode, playing against tanks is just terrible. Even in open queue, like just having like 4 tanks, you know, it's pretty brutal. So we're looking, or I guess they're looking at a global nerf. Maybe tanks overall health will be reduced by 25%, maybe damage reduced by 10%. Those are just numbers I'm throwing out, but you guys get the idea. Tanks should be globally nerfed in game modes that are not role queue, which is huge. Another thing they're talking about is nerfing the ult charge. I mentioned it in the last video. Also very, very important. It should be a nerf that comes, I believe, in season 3, in which instead of, let's say, having 30% ult charge, maybe once you swap, it's only 20% or 25%. Not too sure. The actual system itself is staying in place. It is only getting nerfed, not removed, which, you know, it's still important. It should reduce the counterpicking effectiveness, but it won't remove it altogether. Something else being talked about is a Reinhardt buff, in which they're going to buff his Fire Strike. This is very, very important and crucial. Reinhardt has been needing a buff, and you know, it'll finally come in an area which most of the community wanted. They said buff his Fire Strike for 1, and well, that's what they're starting with. Also, I want to quickly apologize. The gameplay just shifted to pre-Roadhog nerf from the last video. Want to get this news out, so I'm just reusing some of my gameplay, but I digress. The next thing they talked about was a Ramattra nerf, and that's mainly just to do with his ultimate, in which when he's actually ulting, basically, we know there's that infinite ult until you get away. I think they might shorten the time in which when you make that distance, when you create that gap, you can stay away for a shorter period of time for that ultimate to close down. You know, the community hasn't been overly aggressive against Ramattra, according to most content creators, but if you browse like the subreddits and such, I feel like in lower rank, especially like gold below, people have kind of felt oppressed by Ramattra's ultimate. It's just one of those things, like it really does scale with the ranks. They also touched up on Genji a little bit. This one I find very, very interesting. So according to them, using their data on the back end, they're saying that Genji isn't underperforming like the community believes he is. And what I assume is very similar to what I've said multiple times this video, is it's very rank dependent. I guess in the lower ranks up to the medium ranks, he's performing just as intended, and he's just really, really crap in the top tier ranks, and most content creators are the top tier ranks, and that's what gets perpetuated. But with that being said, I still feel like the community as a whole always felt that he stayed pretty weak after the nerf, and Blizzard themselves did say one thing. They said that they might believe that the power is too much focused on his Dragon Blade, so his ultimate, and could be shifted elsewhere. And this is something I actually kind of agree with, because if you're someone who plays Genji a lot and you get very, very, very profound with his ultimate and you pop it at a very good time, you can do some massive damage and of course completely twist out the team fight. But you mess up that ultimate and you're back to farming, and you feel like you might not be able to assassinate very much without it, and it can feel a little bit boring because you're just farming Blade. I mean, Genji's as a hero is farming Blade, so they might shift away from his ultimate power and put it back into his shurikens, maybe his dash, etc. And I do believe that would be a good way to balance him, because I think having him more fun consistently and less reliant on that ultimate is a good change. Let's talk about Wrecking Ball. Some people will love him, some people will hate him. He can be hard to deal with, but at the moment he does deserve a buff. At least statistically speaking, he is at the bottom of most tier lists. With that being said, the changes that they're looking at, which can be as soon as Season 3, which is just a couple weeks away, is having his shield come up gradually instead of in bursts, like you have to commit fully to get that shield, and shifting away from the all or nothing commitment that he currently is. Now, will that be enough? I don't know, but let me know what you guys think down below.